Live now.
Okay.
Hello, God bless you all. If I'm not mistaken, I believe we are live. And
Yes.
as you can see, we have our special guest with us here on tonight. As
Hey.
I always say, we're just grateful to God for another day that He has blessed us to see and another time to be together, and just grateful for another week that He's blessed us to come through, with emphasis on the word through, because we get excited when we get to the end of the week, but the fact that we made it through the week, that is
Yeah.
something to be excited about. As you can see on tonight, we are honored to have the world-renowned Janel Barksdale with us on tonight. Yes, this is my sister. I want to call her my baby sister so bad, but she is my sister with many, many talents. And I'm blessed to have sisters that are twins. And we talk about some exciting things. And one day I was talking about making some career changes and doing some different things. And we basically said our subject tonight is know when to go. That is our subject. And I'm just going to go ahead and say this might be a little longer than 5 minutes tonight. I'm just saying. So don't hold it against me. Might be a little bit longer than 5 minutes, but I'm just excited to have my sister. God has blessed her tremendously to start to walk into all of the talents that God has given her with her writing and her books that she has and products and her enterprise, Janel Barksdale Enterprises or JB Enterprises, and just all of that. So she will talk about that later, but we're going to go to our subject real quick. And then I would like for her to talk about Roses and Thorns, her organization, at the end. So Miss Janelle, as we were sitting here talking on this week, candid conversation, and all of a sudden, boom, you said, you got to know how to go. And I said, oh, that's my subject for Friday night. You got to know when to go. So, Janelle, I'm turning it over to you because you had an interesting concept and or way that we can look at this subject on tonight. Ready, go.
Well, good evening. I am so excited to be a part of the 5 minutes with First Lady, just to give honor to the First Lady. And for anybody who grew up Kojic, you know that's part of the script of your testimony, giving honor to God and all those who are in the roster, and to honor to all who honor is due. Well, I certainly want to give honor to my First Lady, my sister, Benita Buckner. And so when it comes to knowing when to say goodbye, there are so many factors that are engaged. And so when we had this candid conversation, we were talking about work and knowing when it's time to leave a work environment. However, it is range true, the same reasons that you should use when it comes to leaving a work situation. It also applies to when you are stepping free from a relationship or stepping free from anything that you've been tied to.
Right.
And so a couple of questions that you'll want to ask yourself is, if we talked about Naomi and Ruth, and I think that's what you're referencing, Benita, that part of our conversation.
Yes.
And when you're talking about Naomi being the matriarch and having these sons and those sons growing up and getting wives, and then those sons dying, and now it's time for them to make that post-mortal decision on where we're going to have our life be, where we're going to have our residence. And so those daughter-in-laws are now tied to this family because they did the honorable thing. They left and they cleaved to their new family. And so now they don't know where to go. And so here they are out here with their mother-in-law saying, we're going to go wherever you go. And so where we're talking from is Ruth, the first chapter, and this dialogue begins in the 8th verse. And so Naomi is releasing them, and they immediately push back and say, no, we're going to, now we're launched onto you. We're going to be a part of your family. You know, we're going to go wherever you go. Your God is going to be our God. And they persisted and said, no, we want to stay with you. But Naomi said, no, what do you expect? You want to stick around for me to have new sons? You know, that's our connection. She was reminding them, you're not my daughters. You're my daughter-in-law. So there you have another family connection. And at that release, Oprah said, all right, I'll go back to my family. She kissed her. So it wasn't this negative dismissal. There was no contention. There was no fighting. She just said, I understand your release and I will now take your direction and move on. Most often when we talk about this exchange, we spend time talking about Naomi and Ruth's relationship and how they stayed connected. But we don't talk about Oprah and her family connection and how she chose to leave. And so I think that there are a few things that we need to take into consideration when it comes to us deciding when it's time to go. And so the first point I think we can talk about, Benita, is when the assignment changes. So in your life, you had a recent change of assignment. And so you're talking about that assignment changing. And that was one of the first factors that rose to say, it's time to make this change. So you have to be really critical when you're thinking through, has my assignment changed? And when we look at Naomi's and her sons, they passed on. So when it comes to Oprah, she was no longer a wife. So her assignment has now changed. That's a first indication of it's time to go. But what would you add to that when your assignment changes?
Oops. We have to also realize during that time frame when an assignment changed, she probably was experiencing fear. Here she, first of all, is grieving that she's lost her husband. And then, like, she left her family and went with her husband. And so now, of course, like you said, her assignment changed. Now she's a widow. Her husband is gone. We don't know if he left her a life insurance policy. We don't know how she was set up or anything. So we don't know how she was what she was getting ready to walk through and what experience she was getting ready to have. So yes, I can understand that her assignment, she probably was like, what am I going to do? Because you know how most wives are, we blend our lives with our spouse. We blend it to the point that, we interchange what we're doing with it, depending on what your career is, depending on if your job is moving, I'm moving with you. I'm going. So now her title has changed. She's no more Mrs. She's probably going to be referred to as Miss or widow. So her title has changed on top of her not being a wife anymore.
Yes. And so that's that first assignment change. Her title is changing, like Benita said, and that comes with so much. When I want to focus our attention on verse 8, where she says, go return each of you to her mother's house. Mm-hmm. And so it's going back to your source. And right. For us, that's your source is God, that you're going to return back to who you know. You're going to return back to who created you, turn back to the purpose that is in your life. Wow. And so she was sending them back after their assignment was over. If you move on to verse 9, you see how, as I was sharing earlier, there was no animosity. She spoke a blessing over them. To let them know that there was no anger, that there was nothing that was in discord. There was still love between them, but her mother-in-law assignment was no longer a part of their lives. And so this takes us into the transition of knowing how to walk away. Wow. So you recognize when it's time to say goodbye, when the assignment is no longer there, you don't have that familiar connection. You're not on assignment from God. It's not aligned to your purpose. When those things are present, that's the indication it's time to go. So now it is, how do you go? Now, Benita, that sparked up another biblical example that we have, and the how to walk away in our conversation.
Yes, it did. And that was we talked about Abraham. Yes. You and I had a conversation about Abraham. And, I think the point you brought up, the fact that when she spoke to them together. There was no going behind one's back or another. She brought them together and spoke to them in a lovingly mother way. And the fact that she didn't say, y'all get out, not in a mean way. Ooh, I'm so glad y'all can go now. It wasn't nothing like that. It was a, ladies, look, I'm not holding anything against you. If you all want to, you all need to go. Basically go back and be with your family, because I don't have any sons. My sons are gone. They've died. And so she's basically letting them know it's okay. You don't feel like you have to take care of me. You don't have to feel like you have to stay here with me because you were married to my sons. Basically saying, like you said, their assignment was over because her sons had died.
Yes, absolutely. Now, when we talk about how to step away from someone, how to say that goodbye, as you brought up there, we have an example with Abraham and with Hagar. So Abraham, we know the story of Sarah and Abraham and how God had promised them a seed, and then their life continued. And oftentimes we have that example in our lives where we've made have a promise over our life, and then time happens and situations occur, and we seem to move further and further away from that promise. But when God makes you a promise, because it feels outside of time, that we don't have to rely on our watch, on our calendar, on our 5 minutes that we possibly have set aside for God to bring our blessing into our life, for him to move and for him to work. And so they were approaching 100 years old. It was after the season of time had been for both of them. So, Abraham was no longer effective. And Sarah was no longer in the childbearing years. And so here is the time when God steps in to perform a miracle. And so there are times when we feel like our lives this is the time, God. And he's saying, no, this is a time for you. But the time for me is when there are no options. When you feel like you've tried everything, that's when I am able to step in. And so we understand that as part of their trying to fix the situation. And don't we do that when it's God's plan, but we want to take over and project manage him. So we take over and we throw in what ends up being a mess. So they bring another woman, and we read this like it's so casual. They literally brought a side chick into the house. Right.
Yeah.
And so she's young and she's able and she delivers this child. And so there comes no surprise when there becomes this tension in the house. And the tension happens when one son begins to tease the other son, And so Sarah was like, look, I've been able to deal with the fact that she was able to have a child first, because that was part of what I brought in. But what's not going to happen, what you're not about to do, because that mother stood up in her when you see Ishmael mocking and teasing the promised child. Yeah. And so she gave him the word to Abraham and said, she got to go, her and her son. Now, Abraham, of course, wanted to put some pushback because it would be absurd for us to think that he didn't have love for her, right? But he prays and hears from God that, yes, you can release her. And so Abraham does the kind thing. He does it quickly. Yes. And I think sometimes when it's time to say goodbye, we hold on, and we hold on. And the length of time that we hold on makes it more challenging to get to the goodbye. And so arrive to that and come to it quickly. The other thing that he did when it was time and it was clear it was time to say goodbye was that he did it so kind. He packaged her up a meal. He got together a flask of water. He prepared for them to be able to go. And so he just didn't throw her out to the streets. He just didn't, push her away. He did that kindly. And he was clear. So a lot of times when we say a goodbye, and this is sometimes relationships in our life, we add that hope on, right? We'll say, well, goodbye, but if the Lord should have us come back together, if it should be the Lord, so we put all these potentials and these maybes and these possibilities. And when this happens, he made that cut clean. He didn't give her any promise for a future connection. He made that cut clear. And so that morning came, he placed her out and his son, knowing that God was going to cover them. So when it's time to say goodbye, you're going to do this clearly. You're going to be quick. and you're going to make sure that it's kind. And those, if you read Michael Todd's book, Relationship Goals, he has a chapter about relationships and when to say goodbye, and you'll read that story in that chapter. So I just want to reference that.
Well, the part that I really liked about it, when you say that, it lets you know, it resonates that it doesn't have to be nasty and messy.
Right.
You can have a conversation with a person. You can have be in a situation that doesn't always have to come off as mean, hateful, vindictive, all those adjectives. It doesn't have to be that way. There is a better way, a professional way, a godly way, a clean way to say bye. There really is, to release that. And I think when we get to that point to know that we need to release it, I think that's when that prayer comes in of God, show me, guide me, lead me how to release, how to let go, how to say bye. Yeah.
I mean, you gotta say goodbye.
Bye bye.
You know, what was that Britney Spears? Bye, 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 bye. It's like you gotta say goodbye. And again, to be so clear, sometimes when you terminate folks and they're like, it's so kind, you're like, am I really fired? Is that what that was? Or if you're trying to let someone down, or you're ending a relationship. Father, let's not tell all the business, but you're in a relationship, you want to make sure that you're clear, because you can be so Christian kind that you are so naturally unclear that the person is not aware that there has been a sever. Right. And so it's important that when you make that sever, that you are clear and that you do end that connection.
I agree. Now we can go on all night talking about this subject. This is very good. I have a feeling, my sister, this is going to have to be a part 2, because there is so much into this. And I think that we can learn a lot from this. And you and I were talking because I was saying, even in the midst of this pandemic and everything that is going on, I still say there's a lesson we need to learn even within this pandemic. And we're holding on to things. There's probably people holding on to things even now, saying, well, when the pandemic's over, I'm gonna do this. You're basically stopping your life, waiting for something else to, you know what I mean? You're delaying what the inevitable is going to be on another reason. And I think we need to step back, look at it, and understand that there are times when you have to learn to release and let it go. You really do, and understand when it is time to move on.
Well, I absolutely agree, Benita. If I can make a final note,
yes,
I started attending yoga probably, it's been at least 6 or 7 years ago. It's restorative yoga. So there's a real specific style of yoga. It's the most gentle format. It's designed to release the tensions from your lymphatic system, and really teach you how to breathe, because we sit on dead air because we take such shallow breaths. Mm-hmm. And so I went because I started my new year off several years ago trying to be fit. And so I'm part of it was joining my community fitness center. And I get there and they do that test where they tell you how out of shape you are and how overweight you are to make you feel like you really need this program. And one of the recommendations was restorative yoga. So I visibly rolled my eyes. And so she responded to my action and hey, have you tried yoga? Clearly I've tried it. Not a fan. People standing on their heads brings out the worst in me. And so wasn't clear on what the purpose was. And so she said that there's a specific type. So long story short, I end in this restorative yoga. I'm greeted by this wonderful, kind woman, and she enters me into this practice. Because my mind is busy, I'm always thinking of things. I found it difficult to unwind, but I enjoyed the experience. About 3 sessions in, she's playing Amazing Grace as part of the experience. And so she says these words: release what no longer serves you. Now, in the moment, it was an instruction for breathing, but I have transitioned that statement to impact every area of my life. And so as you're talking, First Lady Buckner, about knowing when to go, it's also knowing when to release, and it is releasing what no longer serves you.
Yes. I love that. That is so true. And I just got a chill over my entire body when you said that. Hallelujah. That is so true. And I hope that you got something out of this. Sister, I have my phone on the side and people are making comments. And we have several people are saying there needs to be a part two. So we're going to have to go a different angle with this and have another discussion really soon. Before we get, I hope you all got something out of this. Please like and share. I'm going to spin it over to our Facebook, not Facebook, but my YouTube channel. And I want you to share with others, make comments, let us know how this is helping. We're just doing our best this year to be intentional in everything we're doing and offering things that will help us to spiritually grow. We already have a foundation. We just need to build upon it. And so I want to do everything that the Lord allows me to do in order to build on the foundation that we already have established, because all it's going to do is help us. All it's going to do is help us to grow, because when you know, you grow. Oh, that's a new hashtag. Yeah, I'm gonna use that. I'm gonna use that. But just grateful for another time that we have together. And before we end this, even on tonight, I would like my beautiful sister, Janel, to give us a snapshot of Roses and Thorn and also tell us what's coming up soon. And you all notice the shirts, we have our shirts on. I'm gonna have to get me a different chair. My chair is too low, you can't see my shirt. But my niece designed it. My sister had these dresses made for us, and they're absolutely beautiful with my new logo. So excited. But if you could talk to us about Roses and Thorns, something dear to your heart. And by the way, I've experienced the restorative yoga. It is an experience that when she first told me, I was like, Now every time I go to Dallas, I say I have to do yoga with my sister. And even now, Roses and Thorns offers it online. You can go on Zoom through Roses and Thorns to see it. And she can tell you about that as well, because if I'm not mistaken, I've already made my reservation to be in there on tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. So, sister, if you could please tell us about Roses and Thorns, give us a snapshot, as well as tell us what's coming up.
Yes, well, Roses and Thorns is a women's ministry. It has the heart of intimate conversations that transforms, liberates, and empowers the lives of women. That's our mission statement. It was born out of the heart of a 20-year-old who was a student at Mizzou. And I had been given permission from my father, who was a pastor, as you know, to have an on-campus Bible study. If you are part of the Church of God in Christ or are familiar with it, there are auxiliaries within it, and one of them is Young Women's Christian Council. And so we were attending it, but then they were talking about husbands and children, and we're young college students. It had nothing to really impact our lives in that moment. So we started just going through scriptures. Just one, it seemed random on campus, and young women just started coming. And so then we got permission to actually launch it. And so me and Amanda Lindsay at the time, we started hosting these Bible studies, and it grew and grew. And at that time, we thought we knew so much, we were going to start a women's organization at 20 years old, like we know everything. But then life happens. And so that's why I want to encourage you, if God has given you a purpose or a promise, to not let your clock dictate how you navigate, because 20 years later, I've moved states, and God planted it to move forward with Roses and Thorns. The original conversation our title was going to be The Total Woman. But I had developed a conversation model with my daughter, who's now 23, but at the time was in grade school. And so we would have these conversations. The roses were the good part of her day, and the thorns were the bad part of her day. And so it was just a way for me to see into her heart, to be able to mother her and to parent her through situations. And so instead of calling it The Total Woman, it is the Roses and Thorns, because as women, we experience roses in our lives, rose seasons, and we also experience thorn seasons. And so I always say that a present thorn does not mean an absent God. And so we come together on a monthly basis every third Friday, and we have a focused conversation. This series that we're in currently is focused and free. and we just dig into the Word of God. We also have a time where we share with one another what our roses and thorns are, so that we can develop a sisterhood and a community to support one another. Every third Friday, we mix it up, so it happens every third Friday, but also we have every other week on Saturday, as Benita mentioned, we have a restorative yoga session. So I give about 5 minutes of encouragement, and Maribel O'Brien from Lighthearted Yoga Studios, she presents a 1-hour session. There is no cost. It is sponsored by Roses and Thorns. We also have a book club that meets every Sunday at 2. You'll find all this information along with a prayer tribe where we have weekly prayer focuses on the website. It is www.rosesandthorns.org. And it's again, it's a community of women who love God and love one another. So Benita will be joining us in the morning. She enjoys the yoga. She's attended with me in person, but also virtually. And and right now we are meeting virtually. Once we are released from the pandemic, we'll go back to meeting in person. And so it's a wonderful opportunity of communities, just sisterhood community. I think I'm still in the room with Benita. You're on mute, Benita, if you're speaking.
I keep doing that.
Okay.
www.rosesandthorns.org. If you can type it in the chat so that I can make sure I pin it correctly, because it's worth your while to go to the website. You can see there's a lot of information out there. She just revamped her website. It is absolutely beautiful. There's all kinds of things you can do. You can purchase, you can, I mean, just go out there and look. I mean, it's worth it to go look. That's www, spell out the words, rosesandthorns.org. I'm getting ready to put it in the chat here.
I typed it there for you, Mimi.
Thank you.
Yes.
But now I just realized I did the Facebook. Y'all don't see, when you get over 50,
you know,
y'all gotta realize this is okay. That's another one too. Another subject. Let me write that down. So I'm just grateful that you were able to join even on tonight, my sister. I appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule. I know you're very busy. So we just take this moment to thank you for joining us. I hope you all enjoyed this on tonight. I think there's going to be a part 2 or part 3 or something, and we look forward to it. Please like and share and continue to be safe. God bless you all.